Yo, what's up everyone? It's Brian and Jim from DrinkABeerandPlayAGame, and today we're checking out arch rivals for the NES.
Alright, this was originally an arcade game, and it came out in 1989. The version we're doing, the NES port, came out in 1990. It later came out on the Sega Genesis, the Game Gear, but it also wound up in compilation sets for the PlayStation 2, Xbox, GameCube, and PC. Anyway, this was developed and published by Midway. You know what they're for? Mortal fucking Kombat. And for NFL Blitz, and for NBA Jam. Basically, awesome arcade games from the 90s.
Jim, did you mention Mortal Kombat?
Well, I lost my place. Let's just do the review.
This goes back to the hoop style of game, where you have 8 unique players, and each one has they're not all completely unique sprites, but they're different enough. You have interesting crowd movements throughout the game. You have a little ref that reminds me of Danny DeVito. You have 2 opposing coaches. You have cheerleaders. So there's a lot going on, and there is a lot to like. In between each shot and basket, you do get some little cutscenes. Sometimes they're static images, sometimes they're moving. Either way, it's a presentation I enjoyed. And as you'll see throughout this game review, Jim always seemed to score a little bit less than me. That's because he was butthurt that he lost by only 3 points in the end of the game.
Goddamn buzzer!
But either way, we both really enjoyed it, and we couldn't help but give this game 8s. I'm only gonna add 1 beer for that little Danny DeVito lookalike ref.
The sound. Not a bad package again. Kinda surprising that all these basketball games have been pretty good in the sound department. Who would have thought?
Jim, they have soul!
Oh my fucking god.
What?
I hope you did that with a sock puppet so it doesn't count.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, you know. Anyway, so the music you get in the game, it's not bad. It's not great. It's definitely on the simpler side. You get an opening screen song, which is, and the song during the game is, more, but during the cutscenes Brian mentioned, you get little, crowd noise kind of things. You get the typical kind of organ music you'd hear in a stadium in the 80s and early 90s. So that's a nice touch. You get a good, decent amount of sound effects. Nothing too crazy, but they do the job. Overall, it's a pretty good package. There's a lot of variation here, and that's probably the strongest thing going for it. Brian gave it a 7, I gave it a 6. If the sound was a little more nuanced, I guess I'd give it a 7, and I'll add another beer just for.
So the control. In my eyes, this has been the best controlling basketball game on the NES thus far. You have your standard B passes, A shoots, but you have a nice little touch where if you hold in B and you hit A, you can fake out your opponents. You can also punch your opponents while on defense, and we'll get into that a little bit later, but it is just an awesome mechanic that I love. In general, the shooting mechanic just feels a little more smooth, and sometimes you will make shots from ridiculous distances, but once again, this is supposed to be more of an arcade-style game and less realistic. I don't know what it is about NES games, but the less realistic the sports game, it seems the funner it is. And that's just what happens with the control in this game. So as you see, I gave it an 8, Jim gave it a 7. I'm only adding 1 more beer, because punching people is awesome!
Alright, the gameplay. Gotta get this out of the way first. There's only 1 game mode in this game. I know it's a port of an arcade game, which is fine, but they could have at least added something to it. So basically you get 1-player and 2-player modes. And all you have is a basketball game. Now, unfortunately, this version is missing out on some of the little tweaks that the arcade mode had. One of the most noticeable is the fact that in the arcade, people from the crowd can throw stuff on the court to mess with you. You don't get that here. Minor gripe, but it kind of sucks it wasn't there. Overall, though, the gameplay is really fun. It's nice and different. It's definitely arcadey. Reminds us of, say, NBA Jam and NFL Blitz almost mixed together. That crazy violence mixed with just the over-the-top fun factor. Is it the deepest in the world? No. Are the options the deepest? No. You get 8 different players that you can play as. They give you stats at the end of the game, which is a nice touch, and they give it to you for all the players who played in the game. Of course, all the players are fictional. They're, just goofy arcade characters. It's a good package. I probably was a little butthurt at the time, so I gave it a slightly less score, but Brian gave it a 7, I gave it a 6. I'll add another beer just for not having banana peels.
Banana peels, and you're gonna give me shit because I said soul?
I didn't mean it that way. I didn't mean it. Coincidence! Oh god, the Twitter!
Anyway, the originality. Well, once again, this is a game that surprised us. Now you're up to the 4th game in the NES catalog for basketball, yet it still brings some fresh ideas. We mentioned the punching, we mentioned the fact that you have really detailed stats at the end of the game, but not only that, there's this interesting mechanic where you can kind of tell your teammate what to do. We haven't seen it before. We didn't necessarily love it, but it's definitely unique. So, we couldn't help but give it high scores. As you see, I gave it an 8, Jim gave it a 7, and I'm gonna add 2 beers just for Jim's comment about the banana peel.
No!
Alright, replayability. You get the 8 different characters, and they all kind of play differently, so that helps. You don't get a lot of game modes, which kind of takes away from the scores here, but you know what? At the end of the day, it's just fun. And of basketball games, especially to this point, this is the one we'd probably go back to the most. Fun factor alone, we both gave it 7s. And I'll give it another beer just for a lack of overall game modes.
What can I say? Overall, we really enjoyed this game. It is by no means perfect, and there are definitely some areas, especially in the control, that they could have tightened up, but we just had fun playing it, and that's what's most important. Now, like Jim mentioned, this so far has been the best basketball game we've played for the NES. We haven't gotten through all 10 of them yet, but we're almost there, and I don't know...
10?
Yeah.
Jesus!
That's half of 20, which is how many baseball games there were, so shut up! Anyway, I'd be shocked if something dethrones this game, but we'll see. As you can see from the score, I gave it an 8, Jim, Butthurt Napoleon, gave it a 7, and I'm gonna give it one more beer, but this is strictly a celebratory beer, because it deserves it. So as you can see, once we did all the tough math to calculate our scores together, this game rounds out to a 7.2. I wholeheartedly agree with that score. Not perfect, but definitely well above average. You should really pick this up if you enjoy basketball games, or if you just want a fun game for the NES for you and your friends to dick around with. And as far as the beer pairing is going, we wanted to go with a beer that's strong enough to get you drunk fairly fast, but remain drinkable throughout the night. So, we looked through our backlog and we went with Goose Island's Festivity Ale. This is a beer that comes in at 7.7%. It's got a lot of flavor and it's pretty goddamn drinkable. So, pair that with this game and we guarantee you'll have a fun night. Cheers, guys. And as always, thanks for checking out our video. Make sure you give us a thumbs up or click subscribe if you enjoyed it. Be sure to check out our other basketball game reviews, linked below. See you next time, guys.